Willkommen und guten Abend zu The Future of Demonstration HOTHOUSE, heute unter dem Titel Down to Earth. Und es ist unsere vorletzte Veranstaltung. Am 2. Oktober wird die letzte stattfinden und ich hoffe natürlich, dass ihr dann auch kommt. Die Veranstaltung, wie alle anderen, sind auf Englisch, obwohl ich Sie jetzt auf Deutsch begrüße. Und ich gebe das Mikrofon weiter an Gerald Nestler, meinem Partner, mit dem ich gemeinsam The Future of Demonstration entwickelt habe.
Danke. Welcome to the third HOTHOUSE event, Down to Earth, Countering Climate Misinformation and Inequality in the Digital Age. The Future of Demonstration, to give you a brief, very brief intro, combines art, activism, discourse, performance and sound and video to explore forms of individual and civil resistance. HOTHOUSE, the fifth, not the sixth, the fifth of course, season of the art series engages with transformation through technologies, in particular so-called artificial intelligence. Today's HOTHOUSE theme, embedded in our post-disciplinary artistic performative framework, it addresses the question of how AI and other digital means amplify climate misinformation, inequality, and polarization. How can individuals and communities act against these power schemes and abuses? With our partners and guests tonight, we don't just want to criticize these developments, but demonstrate concrete strategies for countering them. As regards today's discursive program, we are honored that Lucas Chancel, Professor of Economics and Co-Director of the World Inequality Lab at Sciences Po Paris, will provide us via point cloud with insights into how some of the most pressing forms of global inequality are not only related, but intensifying, if not reinforcing each other. Income inequalities, wealth inequalities, gender inequalities, and climate change inequalities. Following this highly topical introduction that lays the ground for our theme tonight, we are proud to host the European premiere of Berlin-based NGO Tactical Tech's latest work, the Replay book, A Field Guide to Climate Information Crisis, presented by its co-executive director and co-founder and friend, Marek Tyszynski. Over the course of 2 years, Tactical Tech developed this project together over 30 cross-disciplinary experts. From attention-sucking algorithms to AI-generated slop, the Replay book explores how our information environment is shaping and influencing opinion on climate and offers strategies to decode, disorder, challenge tech paradigms, and counteract division. Marek's presentation, which will take the time necessary to share main insights and proposals, will be followed by 2 direct responses and a discussion. We're delighted to welcome YASA scientist and artist Camille Belma and Thomas Lohninger of Vienna's own Epicenter Works. Both Camille and Thomas will share their far-reaching insights into digital misinformation and the vicious cycle it bears on climate catastrophe, hidden labor, population, environment, gender issues, and inequality. Like all former HOTHOUSE events, discourse is one aspect of our broader artistic conception that consists of performance, sound, and visual arts, namely Daphne Horenchik, Brandosaurus Seli, Soulcat, and the 2 of us, Sylvia and me. The evening will end again, like all HOTHOUSE events, with a tribunalistic ritual we call iconoclastic acts, dishonoring tyrant idols, with which we smash techno-capitalist authoritarians, or if you prefer, authoritarian capitalists. I hope you enjoy and learn and share and turn renegade. Lucas, please give us our speech.
Thank you very much, and guten Abend. So here I am, or at least I'm not exactly here, right? Because I'm in Paris and there's a digitalized version of myself in Vienna. And the question is, what powers this digital version of myself speaking to you? What energy drives it? And I wanted to tell you a little story that starts in Wyoming in the United States. 2 years ago, a man named Bill Gates, yes, the founder of Microsoft, who is also the founder of a nuclear firm named TerraPower. Well, Bill Gates put the first brick of the construction site of a nuclear power plant in a desert in western United States. And his idea is that he will save the world from climate change thanks to nuclear technology. A few months after that, Microsoft, another firm he created, invested hundreds of millions of dollars to reactivate a nuclear facility that had been deactivated 15 years ago on the same site where there had been a nuclear accident in 1979, 3 Mile Island. Google, Amazon, Facebook all did the same. For what reason? Well, to power their data centers and the huge electricity and energy needs of artificial intelligence. So this raises the question, who is going to control energy in the 21st century? Who is going to own power? And as we see these big tech actors who already are controlling big parts of society through the media, through social media platforms, and in other ways, now we see them getting involved in the energy sector. And I think we should all question this moment. What is happening right now is a potential for a big shift in how energy has been organized. In European countries and in other countries around the world, energy has been controlled and regulated over the past decades by municipalities, by governments, sometimes by regions, sometimes by the private sector. But in Europe, we have a good dose of common ownership, either through public, municipal, or through other means of common ownership of energy. And what we see with big tech actors investing in nuclear power plants to fuel AI and needs of the future is something that could also happen here in Europe. In fact, there are some groups in the UK, in the United Kingdom, that are calling for more investments by American tech multinationals in their energy systems. So the question is really about who is going to control energy in the 21st century. And there's another potential future, which is an energy system which is actually not controlled by Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, but that is controlled by China. That has invested over the past 2 decades to control solar panel production, distribution, at all the levels of the production chain in the globe. Electric batteries also produced massively in China. Electric cars are going to flood European markets. That's another possible future and a possible way to think about who is going to own the energy system in the 21st century. Of course, there are other possibilities by which Europeans develop their own producers of renewable energy technologies, where Europeans keep control, public democratic control of their energy utilities. But this means that we really need to discuss these choices. They need to be at the center stage of discussions on what a fair transition is about. We often talk about just transition, energy transition that reduces inequalities, but we very rarely talk about the issue, the key issue of who controls the energy sector. And I would like to end this little speech by quoting a guy named Matthew Boulton. Matthew Boulton is the person without whom James Watt, the inventor of the steam engine, would not have become James Watt. Matthew Boulton is the investor with whom James Watt made a deal. And Matthew Boulton, when he was working in one of his big manufacturers where the first steam engines were being produced, told the person next to him, well, I'm selling here what the entire world desires, power. Playing on the double meaning of the word, electric, mechanic power, but also social and economic power. I think this is what we need to discuss today. Who will own power in the 21st century?
Thank you, Lucas. When you were talking, I was just reminded of another field in which similar developments are happening, as you've been kind of presenting us. It's not just that AI is probably the first ever absolutely proprietary technology we have seen, and also very powerful, but now we see a lot of investment, especially from financial side, BlackRock and others, to kind of build a massive investment into AI infrastructure in order to dominate and control the infrastructure as well. Not just the systems, the chatbots, but also the infrastructure. So we have kind of like the field of energy, the field of information, but also the field of infrastructure in all these kind of levels. The question, of course, would be, is that a situation where Europe can, come to any answer when it comes to these kind of things, or what other ways do you see that we can challenge this kind of situation?
That's a question for me. I'm not sure I heard everything.
Shall I repeat?
No, I think I got the
Okay.
main message. So what can Europe do? Well, when it comes to energy and infrastructure, and I think it's really key to see that we live in a dematerialized world that is still very, very material. And we need to think about these infrastructures, critical infrastructures, and who owns them, who controls them. Well, it's important to not repeat the errors of the past. And one thing that Europeans, I think, missed is the solar production revolution. There were solar producers in Europe, and these producers were entirely wiped out from the map due to Chinese production and how industrial policy was done in other parts of the world, which destroyed the production market in Europe. We still have some industry for low carbon technologies in wind energy, in electric batteries, in making steel using hydrogen fueled by low carbon or zero carbon electricity rather than with coal. But these producers can be very much at risk. In fact, one of them, a big European battery producer, electric battery producer, went bankrupt earlier this year. And instead of, say, maybe a few European countries, like Austria, Germany and France, coming to help, to invest in this battery production maker, to save it, this did not happen. The company was chopped off in several bits, and the most important bits were bought by a European firm. So this is where we are. Europe is in a specific, special momentum. And it needs to choose whether it wants to run an energy system, on infrastructures that are produced elsewhere, that maybe are owned by other actors, or it invests in its own resources. And maybe it's going to decide that it owns these resources in a democratic manner. And there are many options to democratize the ownership of things, of infrastructure. It can be nationalization. It can be a European nationalization, whereby several governments are going to co-own infrastructure. It can be municipal ownership. It can be cooperative ownership. There are many ways to extract ownership of the private for-profit sector and put it in the hands of the many. But again, it's really important to be aware that these are challenges and issues happening right now. So if we don't talk about them, if we don't discuss them, for sure, we won't be able to make the right choices.
Thank you. I think if we continue with our program, we will find other aspects that are very important to discuss and take us from kind of like a European situation into a more global situation in which the relation between climate change and technology becomes something very urgent to address. And I hand the microphone to Marek to continue that conversation.
Thanks, Lucas. I will try to refer to what Lucas was saying in some way. Hi, everyone. I think it's amazing that you came here during the beginning of rainy season in Vienna. Thanks for that. I'm also a little bit sick, so I may cough from now and then and look at my notes because I can't remember my name today. I will refer to what Lucas was saying and kind of pivot into why I'm here today, is that when we talk about sovereignty, when we talk about Europe, there's plenty of ideas right now to kind of rebuild Europe independent from what dominated everything, which is neoliberal American politics. And that happened long time ago, way before technology. So the solutions we have to look at are much more systemic than we think. But also I think we have very good understanding of what the problems are. I also think we have very good analysis of these problems. And we know how hard it is to address these problems in a atomized, polarized, confused and society where other narratives that are not necessarily evidence and information-based dominate, and power is governing in a ways that we don't have, I would say, apparatus for. So I'm here to kind of do the opposite in some way. Normally we would talk a lot about, and I will talk a little bit about what the problems are, what we know, and so on, etc. But in December last year, we had a gathering in Berlin where we got about 35 people to discuss something different, to look at what journalists, non-for-profit organizations, individual experts, artists, and whoever else, policymakers we had also in the room, and so on, to focus on what can be done. Because we have to talk more about not only what can be done in abstract in general, but what are our individual experiences of how we go about the problems that we see. And I'll try to operate with one hand everything. Let's see what's going to work. So the principal kind of problem we are looking at is that it is impossible to talk about climate change or an environmental disaster that we're witnessing right now without addressing the information disorder, without addressing the fact that to be able as society to act together, we have to first, in a way, solve the problem of information. And information today is not what it used to be. Information today is technology a lot. Information today is totally new actors, new players, new influencers, and totally new formats that are growing on their own. They're not anymore owned by specific actors that used to own these spaces in different ways. So what we did, we invited these 35 people to look into tactics and methods that each of us individually is trying, and try to bring them together and share them and so on. So what I'm going to do today is, in a way, sharing with you the replay book, as Gerald said. And the replay book is basically a set of texts, but they are more than just text. It's about 40 contributors that produce 30 chapters. I'm going to quickly go through them, divided into three groups. And at the end, you will get the QR code, and you can look at the replay book and see what it means to you, what you can do about it. And you can grab the chair, because that's going to take another 10 minutes probably. So I'm not going to show a lot of data, but I just wanted to show you this one to kind of give the context to what we talk about, information problem. When there were fires in Los Angeles last year, this is the distribution of where people were going for information. And it's divided into media and emergency response information systems. And at the top is Alex Jones' misinformation campaign and the number of people that were listening to him. So even if you add all of the emergency responses and news posts, they don't even add up to the audience that Alex Jones had. I don't know, I find it, when I saw it for the first time, I find it really disturbing. How come one man can have such a massive influence out of any control on, life and death situation? So when you're going to look at the replay book, it's divided into 3 chapters. So the first one is about decoding information disorder. And each of the chapters has like 3 contributions and an intro. And I'm not going to go through all of them because that would be extremely boring. But just so you know, each of them is super short. They're like 2 pages, 3 pages, with a lot of resources, because the idea behind the replay book was to make it as practical, as tangible, and as usable as possible. And this replay book is mostly focusing on organizations, institutions, and individuals that work in Europe. The next version will be much more global, but we decided to start with this one also because we were generously funded to do that by Swedish Postcode Lottery, that I'll mention also later. So decode information, what we agreed with our contributors, it was that we still have to figure out what exactly is going on. And we have to figure out what's going on in the space that we have zero ownership of. I mean, the digital space is not the space that we own. Even if you think about open source, even if you think about more niche social media and so on, etc., they still run on corporate infrastructure. The people who can process data, who have access to it, who know what's going on are the big corporations. And so we're looking at different actors and trying to understand what the heck is going on. And you will have interesting contributors here. One of them is actually in the previous section, in this section, analyzing, which is unusual. One of my, I would say, shout out to Elliot Higgins from Bellingcat. Normally, Elliot would be talking about open source investigations because that's what Bellingcat does. But recently, they were spending a lot of time analyzing why they cannot get out of the bubbles, why there are people that they cannot come across to, and what they can do about it, because confronting them doesn't work, complaining about them doesn't work, kind of, segregating, audiences into groups doesn't work. And so he's been spending a lot of time on that and shares a number of tactics that Bellingcat is taking on. The next section, investigating, of course, is talking about OSINT, social media analysis, all these kind of things that we've been doing for many, many years, and I think we still have to do them. There's no escape from that. And the last section on forecasting is also using different tools for what the commercial world is good at, what advertisement is good at, what businesses are good at, which is predicting trends, looking at patterns, and seeing what people may be interested in, and kind of in a way that what we've been thinking, we can only stick to our own tools and insist that things have to be done the way we want them to be done. We also have to enter spaces and use tools that otherwise you would find problematic, such as, whatever, TikTok or AI or whatnot. The second, and I will talk about the second a bit more, challenge the tech paradigm. This is what Gerald was talking about. It's very hard to do it because our individual experience is that the technology we have at hand, like I have this mobile phone, or you have your iPhone, or we're all using AI these days, is extremely empowering. It's extremely easy to use, is very frictionless, and so on, etc. And I've been running workshops around AI for the last few weeks with journalists, with organizations working on data, and so on. And it's very hard to kind of break the barrier between. We cannot look at these tools as tools anymore. We have to look at the systems behind them. And those are not two separate things. Those are exactly the same thing. So every single tool that we use is introducing a specific system to our own ecosystems of how we learn, how we understand the world, etc. And the problem we have with big tech is that it's kind of exploded in the last few years with maybe even from the moment that ChatGPT was announced, and everybody's freaking out about two things, the generative AI and the agentic AI. And we have some contributions that are addressing that, but what I'm saying now is not necessarily covered by the playbook. It's in a way context to the playbook. That we cannot talk about action, we cannot talk about information without talking about technology and big technology players, because they are the richest right now. The evaluation is in trillions. So the 7 biggest corporations occupies 60% of the global market in the evaluation. That have never been the case. And they also dictate how we communicate, how and when and where we access information. So it's not only about neutral kind of a technology that the market's going to regulate. It is a very kind of a game about power. I would just bring two things to that conversation. When we talk about potential for sovereignty, potential for independent kind of way of doing things, I think infrastructure-wise that is not possible anymore. We are so kind of embedded in the big tech, either American or a little bit Chinese. And Europe or other actors won't be able to produce anything of that scale. And so we have to see what's going to happen with that. So challenging the tech paradigm is divided into 3. So how do you do critique these ways where the audience is not interested in critique anymore? And even at our own spaces, people we work with, we have this duality that on one hand we are very critical, but at the same time we are totally dependent. How do you question it, and how you think about transformation? So of course there are different ways of looking at it, and there's 9 people who are trying to explore this field of technology, not only looking at alternatives, at self-hosting or figuring out methodologies for choosing tools and being tactical and strategic about. But how can we exist within this, I would say, I don't want to use the word complex because that doesn't give the justice to how bad this info-technological sphere right now is, and how it is making it impossible to look at problems. And how much money is going to development of tools that won't do anything good. So contributors that we have in the playbook are looking at what are the actual problems that needs to be solved. And they don't look at it from this typical technocratic, techno-solutionist perspective that, okay, we have AI, so AI can solve this and that problem. No, often the problems you're looking at that are social, cultural problems related to people's well-being may not even require any technology. They need totally different solutions. And maybe at some point somebody should figure out that there is a technology that can be used to fix things. But right now we are in this paradigm of everything can be fixed by big tech and AI, which is unfortunately going nowhere. Where are we? And the last set of interventions in this playbook that actually looks very interesting is about how we can mobilize, organize, and how we can do things together. How we can engage with audiences that frequent places that we don't feel comfortable of being at. How we can tackle actors that master these spaces and tools like trolls and so on, etc. How we can defend ourselves in these spaces, and how we can mobilize using different strategies of commerce, of strategies of actors that we normally would not associate ourselves with, that are quite successful in understanding the environment in which we deal with information. So those are all the contributors. It is a lot of them. It's practically 45 people who work on the playbook, organizations and individuals. It's kind of not readable, but you will download it in a second and you can read the actual names of people. But it looks kind of like this, which is a fake in a way, because we only have 4 books that we printed. It exists in a PDF format, so you can get it as a PDF for free in a second. We will print in October. And here you go. You can get it from this QR code. But before I finish, I just want to say a few things, kind of what was the framework, maybe repeating a few things, and what we're feeling like we should do more or less. So I think one of the discussions we have had with the contributors is the absolute need for reframing what the problem is. And there's a kind of a contradiction here, because it's not misinformation. Misinformation is just a symptom. The problem is systemic. Who owns the space that is the only space in terms of infrastructure in which the discussion, debate, or lack of it is happening, and how to deal with the space that is driven by very selfish business model that is a mixture of surveillance and advertisement, where the space is exclusively about collecting as much as possible data about individuals so they can be profiled, and then you can throw at them different kinds of advertisements so you can sell your services and products. This business model has been going on since the 90s and is getting worse and worse with AI. And AI complicates it also a lot, because it excludes other actors that were kind of benefiting from that space. Like a lot of media was able to make money on advertisement, and now they are completely out of the loop. So the second thing, it's not enough to say, because I often myself would say things like, does actually fact-checking work? Is it worth doing investigations that we're doing? Is it trend mapping worth anything? And on one hand, those are kind of drops in the ocean in many cases. But I still believe from kind of our perspective of working in this area for over 22 years, is that we still have to do it. Like fact-checking is as important as it always was. Trend mapping, investigation, and other pre-banking methods are vital, because we can't really resign our reason and not insist that we need more verified information, facts, evidence, and so on, etc. The problem is how we can use what we know in building different narratives and communicate with people that are on the other side. What some actors, some people in the replaybook also say is that for those who are, maybe let's phrase it this way, for us, people who are sharing misinformation those are people who share misinformation. But people who share misinformation, they don't feel like it. They actually feel like they're sharing the facts that they believe in, and they think that we are people that are sharing hoax and untruths and are kind of part of the elitist system. And I think as long as we're going to look at each other with this kind of level of antagonism, they'll be not possible to have any communication. I think the other thing we learned from the replay book is that we need much more collaboration across different disciplines. So it was fantastic to have researchers, technologists, creatives, and whatnot in the same room and think and talk and inspire each other in what actually works and so on. I think we have to also think about not only solving problems right now, because we are in this hothouse space where we have to address everything right now. The opponents, if you like, the politicians or the tech bros, making everything important now. And so that disables us from thinking about tomorrow. And I think we should spend more time on thinking about what are our strategies for tomorrow. And we still have to address, the horrible environment that is being thrown at us. So that's the replay book. I don't think I have more slides here. I think that's it. This is already something else. So thank you for listening. I hope it was good. I don't feel very well today, so not sure if that made any sense. Yeah.
It made a million sense, huh?
Listen. Blood's been harder than damn back than what we done took up a slack. Just when we thought we had it safe back when behind the new barriers, walls and gates, it breaks away as some kind of new array. A new slaughter every day. Mother Nature, man, I wanna look away. Since the very beginning we fought her. When you found us weak, we sought her. So back at us and neglect your own, we take the corpses back and then remind us every day we never really had it bad. In paradise with the diamonds and still to rise. We never have it this, any or otherwise. Struggle in the morning, struggle in the evening when it's time for bed. Struggle in the morning, struggle for the daily bread. Praying back that you wanna have or wanna have. Maybe just not a bloodbath. Go pump, pump. Yes, we can teach each other. Yeah, we can teach each other. Yeah, we can feed 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 each other. We can teach each other. Yeah. Go pump, pump. My pulse endures the hardest times till infinity. A great resembles and infinity. Yeah, this wide resilience and beautiful diversity. Yeah, now this is what it is. You gotta believe that one day we gotta survive. We're gonna be back once live. Yeah, and then remind us that we took up. Yeah, till we find the real way. They want to stray? Yes. No, we don't know. Yeah. Now we could teach each other. Now we can feed each other. Yeah, teach each other. Now feed each other. Yeah, teach each other. Yeah, feed each other. Yeah, teach each other. Yeah, feed each other. Yeah, teach each other. Yeah, feed each other. Can we teach each other? Can we feed each other? Can we teach each other? Can we love each other? Can we feed each other? Can we teach each other? Yeah. Can we? 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 Can we teach each other? Can we feed each other? Can we teach each other? Can we feed each other? Can we teach each other? Can we? Can we? Can we? Can we be free? Can we be free Palestine?
Okay, I think it's me now. So, hello everybody, my name is Camille Bellemin. I'm an art and science curator, a researcher and artist. And over the past couple of years, I've been very interested in climate science communication. And I can share today some insights from my work. And thanks a lot, Marek, for your input, because I think this is tremendously important work you're doing. And yeah, I can give my perspective as a climate scientist and communicator. So, as you may know, today we've reached unprecedented climate changes. The year of 2024 has reached the 1.5 degrees of average temperature rise globally. And yeah, so we already have reached a stage of climate change that is causing irreversible damage on all types of life on Earth. And there has been these warnings for over 60 years. So 60 years ago, climate scientists were already saying this and sharing this information. And despite all this, there is a growing disparity, a growing gap between what the scientists are saying and the political reality. Politicians still refuse to act faster or to listen to the alarms of the scientists. And in this context, I think this is crucial that scientific institutions redirect resources from producing science, not that we should not be producing climate science, of course, but some resource and some funding should be redirected towards delivering it strategically to the public, thinking about different audience, thinking strategically. So this means, as I said, communicating more and allocating more funding to do this. So now I'm going to ask in the room, who knows what the IPCC is? You can raise your hand. Okay, so we have maybe 5 people. So the IPCC is the International Panel for Climate Change, and it's a UN effort to bring climate scientists from all over the world to produce every 4 years a massive, huge report that summarizes very soundly, very precisely and quantitatively and qualitatively climate science globally. And they produce this work, they have sleepless nights, they work so much, and when the report is being released in the media, it doesn't make a lot of echo. And so this is a massive issue. And so here what you can see on this graph is from a book from Randy Olson, who is an ocean scientist that turned into a Hollywood filmmaker. And you can see in gray the budget that is dedicated to production in gray and to marketing in black along 3 Hollywood movies on the left, and on the right it's a big report, a bit like the IPCC but for ocean science. And you can see the share of resource that is allocated to marketing compared to production. So this is a bit what I mean in terms of we need to allocate more funding. When you think about a movie like Barbie, all the massive amount of resources that have been allocated to the communication really worked in this sense because Barbie was a huge cultural phenomena. And maybe it also changed mine regarding the gender aspect. So in addition to communicating more, we also need to communicate better, using effect and emotion, using aesthetic, collaborating with artists, using embodiment and experience, stories, and to counter the apocalyptic framings that we all know very well, using positive framing and also humor. So one of the last things I want to show you is a project that exemplifies a little bit this aspect of strategizing climate science communication. It's a project I've been conducting with 8 artists, researchers, and friends. Some of them are in the room today. And we wrote a book that is being released next Wednesday at the WAF Gallery if you want to join. And it's about EcoSlay. So EcoSlay is a artistic research project, but it's also a movement and a method that aims to integrate environmentalism into popular culture and into the mainstream. And in this first book, we really explore, we think about audience, so as Marek was saying, and we here think about the audience that would be the youth, specifically like the Gen Z, then millennials, using the figure of the girl. So I'm going to show you a few examples. So that's not from the book, but that's from the Instagram page. So we also use memes and things that maybe speak to a certain generation. And we kind of like here strategically use a certain language, a certain aesthetic that would please, or that would be, that would appeal to a certain audience, and me included, of course, and using cultural pop icons such as Paris Hilton or Britney to deliver kind of like concise information about climate change. So here that we've reached the 1.5 degree warming, or the famous graph from the Oxfam that shows the huge disparities in terms of climate change inequalities. So you can follow us and you can come to the book release if you want to hear more. But of course this project can expand well beyond these manifestations. Not everyone is interested maybe in such pop stars, but maybe some others are interested in football or rock music, so you can really think about targeting your audience and delivering the climate information in a way that would speak to larger audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Camilla. It's actually a brilliant segue. Let me introduce myself as Thomas Lohninger. I'm Executive Director of Epicenter Works. We are a Vienna-based digital rights organization. So we actually do not work in climate change at all. Our roots are in the anti-surveillance, privacy, and digital rights community, where we are quite well known for working on laws, going to high courts, and the nasty surveillance bills. But we also do a lot of pro-democracy work. And it's our belief that actually digital rights has a role to play in modernizing our democracy. We believe that digital technologies have a vital role to play, because although the internet no longer is innocent, people that can still remember the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, when we all believed that the internet would make our lives much better and hold our governments much more accountable, I think we are all past that stage. We are now in the more like post-teenage depression age, when we know how horrible the internet can be abused by those in power. But nevertheless, it's a little bit my job as a professional optimist to also give you a little bit of a hopeful message. every new medium also creates a new type of politics. Martin Luther would not have been possible without the printing press. Adolf Hitler would not have been possible without the radio. And I can't imagine Donald Trump without his Twitter or Truth Social account. We have yet to see a politician who actually leverages the short video format. Maybe it's Zoran Mandami, the new candidate for New York mayor, or maybe it will be someone else who actually uses this very short, brief attention span, short video format for their political messaging. But what can we actually do as civil society, as someone who works for an NGO that has no suitcase of money? We have no arguments in terms of like, do this so we'll move our factories away. All we have is good arguments and, at best, the majority of people on our side. And here again, technology comes back in. I actually believe that good online campaigns, good grassroots actions on the street can make a difference, even in times when you wouldn't expect it. Otherwise, Jimmy Kimmel would still be off the airwaves in the US. So there is also a kind of a professional reason to stay hopeful, to still not let yourself down in despair. I know it's very easy these days, particularly if you look at climate change figures and the overall macroscopic trends of the world. But we still have a choice to make how we face those realities and what are the tools that we actually employ and bring to the table. And here, all of us have a voice that is currently it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel that we can add something to the debate. It doesn't feel like institutions are responsible or even up to the task. Yes, in these times of change, when more and more algorithms instead of publishers are deciding what is the common dominant narrative of today, of this week, what the news cycle decides, I would actually argue that classical institutions have even a bigger role to play. That we need more journalism, we need more independent justice, we need more democracy, we need more multilateralism, like the United Nations that has a complex here in Vienna. All of these things are extremely important, particularly in these times when billionaires are trying to make all of our attention focus on something else. Right now, I think most people are aware that the current system is no longer working, that we do have tremendous problems in terms of distribution of wealth, of resources, and of attention. And so, what are the solutions if the current system stopped working? You could either tax the rich, and there's a bigger and bigger movement for that, or you could just spill hate, come up with racism, and the tech billionaires in the US made it very clear on which side of that debate they're standing. At the same time, and now looking back at Marek's talk, the law cannot fix what technology has broken. We need the hackers, we need the technologists, we need the security researchers, we need the universities, we need those parts of civil society that can help us hold the vendors to account. Because we are in a weird space. Right now, I'm old enough to remember when we were fighting for digital sovereignty, for getting rid of Microsoft. Let's all lose Linux. Let's all have free and open source systems. And this was a fringe idea, almost communist. And now with the biggest lobbyist in town, the guy in the White House, suddenly every single politician in Europe reiterates this idea. So it's not so much. Sometimes you are lucky. Sometimes you do not even need to convince the big politicians to do what you want. It's much more about actually getting them to deliver on their promises. And this is again something where you need a mass movement. You need to create the dreams, you need to create the tangible pathway forward, and then a measurable result that can actually also deliver on that progress step by step. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hi. It's me. Hi. I have something very special for us to today? Welcome. Today, I'm going to unveil the future of sustainable innovation. Sustain a stick. 100% renewable pleasure. Zero accountability. Some call it a product. We call it a monument, an homage to the visionaries, the pioneers, the dickheads who built the future. Yes, Bezos. Yes, Musk. Yes, Musk. Yes, Zuckerberg. Yes, Zuckerberg. Men who have boldly taken us to Mars, to the metaverse, to a place we can finally call home. Their legacy, immortalized in silicon, smooth, clean, unapologetically rigid. By continuing, you agree to be guided by their innovation. By continuing, you consent to growth. By continuing, you accept that democracy is a service streamed exclusively on their platforms. I am grateful. I am grateful for my sustainer stick. Look how gently I'm holding it in the palm of my hand. Pure energy. Clean energy. Renewable energy. Green energy. Green energy. It's so green, it's black. Big tech energy. I don't know about you, but I love holding big dick, big tech in the palm of my hand. It makes me feel connected. I feel connected to Mother Earth. What's your name? Dario, so cute. Dario, do you want to hold the sustainer stick? Dario, do you feel the effect of the dick, the stick? Can you feel what it's trying to communicate? I do too. Let's feel it together. Forgive me, Bezos, for I have emitted. I drove a car. It was electric. I took a flight. It was overseas. I ate a burger. But I clicked on plant a tree now on your app. Am I absolved? Am I? Dario, can you feel what it's trying to tell us? It's just a prop, silly. It's just a prop. It's a performance. It's not real. It's silicone. It's fake. It's fake. It's all fake. This is fake. I am fake. You are fake. Everything is fake.
Okay, thank you, Daphne, for this wonderful big dick energy performance. Now we're going to resume to a discussion between the speakers. And I would like to start by asking a question to both of you, of course, but maybe that's more targeted at the climate replay book. So we all want to fight the information crisis about climate change. And we are seeing strategies of communication being used by the far right increasingly that are very aggressive and that are very ethically questionable. So my question is, so for example, before the question, for example, using AI-generated videos to fake the endorsement of political campaigns, as we've seen with Trump 2024 campaign. And my question is, like, to what extent, what is the boundary of the strategies of communication we can use, and to what extent we can use ethically questionable methods, maybe found in marketing or other fields to deliver or to think about the delivering of climate science. Yes.
Thanks for asking a very expensive question. I would start from the fact that the problem with the generative AI, that is kind of a lower access to anybody to produce seemingly high quality output. But then the question for me is, are people watching these materials believing that it is real, or does it actually matter if it is or not? What I can actually say that most of the people on different ends of the spectrum identify with specific views, and then it doesn't matter what the information is produced, how it is being produced, because it's not about veracity or quality. It's about association and kind of being part of the movement, being part of the worldview, and being against something. So I think majority of people that this kind of should I move too? I move too. Okay, yeah, great. We are here now. So for me, there's a twofold question. One is that there's an entire group of people that is claiming, and I kind of agree to a certain extent, that AI is very bad technology in the sense that it is really helping amplify things that are extremely problematic. Some would call them fascists, some would call them something else, and so on. But I don't think that's where the problem is. I think the problem is that people like Trump can say and do whatever they want, and they can change their mind tomorrow. And that's the expectation of the audience. And I don't think that's related to technology per se. Is the fact that questioning everything and being fluid is what matters, because that's what is against elites, supposedly, is against institutions, supposedly, and it's against the other side. So in that sense, everything goes, and it just happens that it's AI because it's cheap and easy, in a way. Now the question, shall we be using AI for producing our truthful, factual and powerful communication? The problem is that we don't create these things in a vacuum. It requires water, energy, it requires human labor that is extremely unpaid, etc. So there's a lot of questions that we would be asking ourselves. Is it fair to use technology that makes our work more effective, raises its efficacy in some way, but is disastrous to the environment that we're trying to actually protect? So I would kind of return the question to you, both of you actually. What does it mean to operate in the environment that we have very limited tools that would work at such a scale that we see them working, and they are effectively used by the forces that basically don't care about anything except making money, and be totally unaccountable in anything they do.
So first let me start that for me, in activism, irrespective of the issue, there is something like a Hippocratic oath. So you're not allowed to win if you have to throw someone else under the bus. And it's important to distinguish between ends and means. I do believe that every effective campaigning tactic will be used by the other side sooner or later. We experienced this, just a small example, but here in Austria, you could submit a response to a consultation of the parliament with simply writing an email. Of course, we abused that loophole and had a big response to a consultation against the surveillance bill, and we actually killed that bill. But of course, in the pandemic, the anti-vaxxers, the anti-science people used the same loophole and quadrupled with their effect, of course. So every technique is neutral inherently. The technology then you build, that of course always has a political direction, but I would not per se discredit the use of AI or generative AI, even in a video context for these purposes, if you can create something that allows you to see a landscape wherever you are in the world, but just adds 2% degrees heating up of the planet to that particular landscape so that the effects become very localized. I think that could be a means of actually getting more people into the debate and caring about it. Whether you do that at scale, of course, there are resource things that you have to factor into, and there are accountability questions that before you do anything need to be answered. But I think we see the other side so blatantly breaking every rule that we also need to become creative. And ultimately, again, like I feel like that we have a moral mandate to try everything and not stand idle, given the circumstances.
Yes, I would agree to this very much. And to your question, Marek, which was, whether we should be using the tools of the big tech corporation, I definitely think that are destroying the environment. I think it's we don't really have any other choice, and I think they can do huge things. They can they can make a revolution there. So I don't know so much about Discord, so maybe you know better, but like what we saw a couple of weeks ago, the revolution in Nepal, like that was led by the Gen Z, organized and that voted their prime minister through Discord. Was very touching and very impressive of what can happen nowadays. Yes, and I absolutely agree that we should really use all our means that we have available. We have crossed so many boundaries. We have crossed 7 out of the 9 planetary boundaries. And we have crossed so much other boundaries in societies that we should really be aggressive and disruptive in how we communicate and how we use information.
Let's just go the circle and see how that goes. So my dilemma with this kind of approach is twofolded, and there's a history to this dilemma, is that, first of all, we heard the same narratives about Twitter 10 years ago, actually 2000, more than 10, almost 15 years ago, when it was revolutionizing Middle East and other places. And what happened, these places are the same as they were. There's tens of thousands of prisoners, political prisoners in these places, and al-Fatah actually is free today, which is unusual to see, and it's something to celebrate. Nevertheless, I don't really like to use this kind of specific cases that because some extremely smart people were able to twist something that justifies this thing as a kind of, a freedom fighter's tool or democratic tool and so on, etc. Because that's what the big tech is always using. They always would say, oh, it works for medicine, or it works for this, and so on, etc. It never scales. It never solves anything. It just makes them sustain their business models behind it. And the second reflection, which I really hate doing because I kind of, it's really boring. Coming from communist country, the history was as such that all the tools were owned by the apparatus, that there was no way of playing with the tools. And those who tried were broken. And you can see that also in Russia at the big scale right now, which is a very similar system. Those who didn't, who actually invented a different means and forms of communication, information, etc., actually were able to build a movement that was outside of the system. So for me, I don't really look at it as a specific individual tools. I'm really interested, what is the system behind that is selling itself as the interfaces that are maybe, solving a problem in Nepal, but generally actually creating much more problems than they solve. So that's the dilemma I'm kind of looking at all the time.
It's super interesting that you mentioned the fact that you come from a formerly communist country, because I wanted to just say that maybe part of the answer is this idea of digital public infrastructure, of actually, similar to a public broadcast, some type of ownership that gives you an alternative model to this owned by private equity, owned by some billionaire who has control and profit motive. Because right now we do have an infrastructure that is tilted against us, that's tilted against things like climate justice. And I would rather have us think about other forms of digital infrastructure that do serve the public, because we both have the requirement to actually become much more self-sufficient from the US and from China, but also more sustainable in terms of like how much energy we are actually consuming for the digital infrastructure that sustains our society. And lastly, the democratic debate. It's so funny that we still have all of the politicians for digital sovereignty up on Twitter, up on the commercial platform, still on Facebook, whereas these alternatives would be on the table, but yet they are pushed away to some theoretical, obscure corner instead of becoming mainstream, which would be the sign of the time.
Thank you. I have maybe a last question for you. What do you think of the role of influencers and of trend makers and of following the trends, especially to kind of like raise more awareness towards the younger generation, and what are the potential of this, given that, of course, all of this is going to happen on the same platform we know very well. So yes, I'm curious whether the climate playbook had something to say about this.
Yeah, thanks. We had to move off the wide wall. That's what we're moving like maniacs here around for some reasons. Yes, the playbook is looking at it because, again, there's a dilemma that I think this is why we wanted to create the playbook, that a lot of things that people talk about we may not do ourselves, but we really appreciate people who have the knowledge, the skills to do it. And I think we have new actors, and you call them influencers, or we can call them however we like, and those are significant actors that are putting forward different narratives, and people listen to them, people believe them, people follow them, and so on, etc. And we have to engage them. We can't just assume that we're not going to talk to them, to each other, and so on, etc. So in the playbook, there's a set of strategies and tactics about how you engage actors that normally are kept away from campaigns we're running or the ideas we have about communication, engagement, mobilization, and organizing. And they also look at tools. So I would differentiate between my personal kind of thinking, what I think is good or bad, versus what is necessary to do. Right? And I think what is necessary to do is to build bridges, is to find new formats for engagement, and even if we have to use the tools we don't like, I mean, it is worth doing if we can have a different discussion. And we have to often talk on other people's terms to be able to have the discussion, not on exclusively our terms. And what I see often happening in my sector is that we sit around the table, We know how to do things, we know what the problem is, but we absolutely have no channel to talk to people to whom we really have to talk. And I think what the playbook is trying to do is to imagine different way of doing something that we've been trying for some time, and it's not enough anymore. It's not anymore enough to stick to your own ways of doing things. We have to be much more open, and we have to look for people who already have the experience. And I think the playbook is kind of gathering all of these people, and it was fascinating to engage in this conversation, to step out of our own bubble and see it very differently.
Thank you for the question. And I actually agree with everything that Marek just said. I believe that, as I said earlier, every medium has a few very fluent speakers that simply excel at using that medium and making it their own. Lumen-like, you know, it's something where you can actually amplify the message via the medium. And we in digital rights community sometimes have this, but I would always be a little bit hesitant when it comes to the classical influencer in terms of a job description, because very often that means paid for influence. So it is not classical media, it's not people that actually are driven by their own beliefs or facts to come to a story, but instead it's marketing in a different form. And so we are so early in this new medium and we do not have proper rules. And everything where money is involved is heavily controlled by companies with their own interests. So ultimately, I wouldn't say that there is a clear position that I have for that. We do work with people that have reach. I have never worked with someone who calls themselves an influencer on any political endeavor, and we have worked with stuff that was really mainstream and has driven millions of people. So I think every good campaign has this moment of loss of control, where people you never met at places where you've never been make your message their own. And that's what I'm waiting to see. And I still believe that this is possible, although everyone who has a lot of reach right now is very much incentivized to also monetize.
I want to ask you a question. Because we kind of had this weird triangle that you're asking us questions, as we were some kind of important dudes here on the stage, which we are not. As a scientist, what is the hardest for you in terms of engagement and breaking, not speaking to people that already are on the same side, but rather, you know, how do you speak to your uncle at the Christmas dinner who doesn't believe in the science that you're doing? What kind of ways of communication you're using, how you engage them into what you know very well, we have evidence for?
Thank you. So I think one aspect, especially when you're talking to people you know, is also playing on the emotional sides. Like, oh, like, you care for me, I'm gonna live, like, you're older than me, and I'm going to live through maybe a lot of disasters that you're not, and it's gonna be, I'm sad, and can you care for this? Can you care about this for me? So I think this kind of social aspect of climate action is very important. So like kind of creating this like social tissue that where you can really, you know, like care about the issue through your social connection. So that's, I think, one aspect, and that worked actually one time for one of my family members, not about climate, but for something else. Yeah, and as a scientist, I think, yeah, I mean, that's also the reason why I'm very interested in art science approaches and in exploring climate communication, because I'm very frustrated how science is being communicated, and of, yeah, in kind of the mainstream way. So I think we really need to get to work on that. Yeah.
I have another question about all of you. I'm just gonna break the rules now about stuff. how important do you think is to like step out of the, because you have your own vocabulary, scientific vocabulary that you're using, you have a certain terminology, in your work you're using certain terminology, etc. And we always make assumption that people care about our terminologies, because we see more than the terminology, if you like, vocabulary, words. But people I was engaged with, and what we also explore in the replay book, is that, you know, majority of us care about having a job, having enough money, having access to education for their kids, and very basic things, and so on, etc. How do you translate, and if you translate, your vocabulary to, instead of talking about climate change or privacy, etc., make something that is fairly far away and abstract? You know, 87% of people agree with climate change, but it's not actionable because it is not priority value. The priority values are the ones that are, you know, close to you, and then you're not going to act on it. So how do you address that?
Yeah, I think it's very important to highlight all the connection that climate has with all these basic aspects of human material needs, because all of these are actually climate change will affect those intensely in the future, and are already doing it. So I think it's really important to, yeah, as you say, like connect, take from the climate science, because it's huge. Like there's so many studies, there's so many research about this, and it's just about it's about showing how your daily life may be affected by, or your income may be affected by climate change. There is this big study, I think last year, from some colleagues that really showed the economic impact at the global scale of climate, and this means more unemployment, this means destruction of infrastructure, this means more inequality, more marginalization, and it's about, yeah, I think making this connection more obvious.
I'll be very brief, but I think in both our fields there is this very subjective layer where it's about the conversation you have with your partner on the weeds, you know, and you want to have that flower. You will still have that biodiversity around you, and you want that moment to be private, to be intimate, and both of these things need a translation between social contexts so that people do care about these values. And then subsequently, I still have not given up hope that there is also a larger value-driven motivation in people to live in a society that's just in terms of climate, individual freedoms, class, and all of the other things. I do believe that we haven't lost people here. It's just other things that have taken the forefront, but we can still reconnect to that if we can make a comprehensive case. And I think Gerald really wants this microphone back.
Larry Fink, the founder and president of BlackRock, the largest investment firm worldwide, and he's also called the godfather of Wall Street, epitomizes the most striking contradictions in the financial world. While he has been vocal about addressing climate change, BlackRock continues to invest heavily in the most polluting sectors. And while Fink states that without global action, every nation will bear enormous costs from a warming planet, including damage from more frequent natural disasters and supply chain failures, and that every company and every industry will be transformed by the transition to a net zero world, reality is different. BlackRock's exposure to oil, gas, and coal reserves totals about 30% of global energy-related emissions. With $85 billion of assets tied to coal alone, BlackRock is the leading investor in the sector. More than any other company globally, it has also profited off deforestation, a major cause of rising emissions. And in 2022, BlackRock announced, we do not consider climate change resolutions to be consistent with our clients' long-term financial interests. That's interesting, isn't it? Despite the consequences of AI on climate change and water resources, BlackRock is heading a multi-billion-dollar investment strategy to own AI infrastructure. The future of AI might soon be in the hand of a techno-capitalist whose background is in finance. Let's not forget, though, that if we want to understand tech, big tech, we need to understand that they act like hedge funds. Here we go. Mark Andreessen. Not yet. More to come. So again, Mark Andreessen. Some of you are certainly aware of that name. An early internet pioneer who developed the first browsers, Mosaic and later Netscape, is now one of the most powerful venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. He's also calling himself a techno-optimist, who believes that techno-capitalist acceleration, all these complicated words, is the solution to all questions. To quote him, any material problem can be solved with more technology. And we need to understand that material problem here relates to a vast scope of applications. As this quote proves, AI will save the world and the climate. Artificial intelligence is our alchemy, our philosopher's stone. We're making sand think. We're becoming technological Superman. Finally, a much older breed, the Koch, or in English actually Koch brothers, Charles and David. I mean, there's only one left. One of them died a few years ago. They're the kingpins of climate change denial. They began funding it long before climate crisis went mainstream. They have prevented congressional action on climate change for 4 decades and funded anti-science groups and climate denial think tanks. In 1997, that's a long time ago, a group around Charles Koch and Mary Rothbard, a very unknown figure around here, but we will meet him again on October 2, established the Carter Institute, a libertarian think tank engaged in climate change denial. In 1991, they hosted the first conference for climate change skeptics. It ran under the title Global Environmental Crisis, Science or Politics. The misinformation tricks, the language, the symbols, the images they've used ever since seep through these questions, don't they? All this boils down to the manipulated and escalated image of the world we've been spammed with. Without any hesitation, and often with conviction, people like Fink, Andreessen, and Koch lie, abuse, but profit. Now you can go. before we actually rejoice, one more minute. What kind of new image would work against the massive engines of right-wing disinformation? I need to be here. I can't see what I'm reading otherwise. Whoops. Art is said to bring imagination to life. And in times of conflict and abuse of power, it creates counter-images. Today we need more than a new visual language, though. We need a different strategy against authoritarian imagination and its coercive rearrangement of desires. HOTHOUSE therefore calls for iconoclasm, the destruction and deconstruction of the false image. Criticism and dissent are not enough. We need insurrections that expose and betray those who misappropriate power and control. We need to abandon loyalty and compliance. We need to turn digital renegades. Each of the 4 discursive performative art events of HOTHOUSE ends with a tribunalistic ritual we entitled Iconoclastic Acts, Dishonor Tyrant Idols, in which we smash those who threaten fundamental rights and human as well as non-human life. This is not an act of aggression. It is artistic self-defense against the false consciousness of supremacy and the violence and destruction it initiates.